Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Silo Tank. Very excited to have all of you here with us today as we demo and take a look at Guide. The CEO of Guide, Troy Sultan, is with us today. He's going to be walking us through an AI coordinator product that he's built, an all-in-one scheduling tool. And we're really excited to take a look at it, and we're really excited to see what Troy has built. And I think the most interesting part about Troy, as y'all know, my favorite thing always is when a talent person builds recruiting tools. And Troy's a talent person. Started off in talent at Groove Shark, was working at Google. Then he actually founded a company that he sold to Gem in 2021, and now he's back at it, round two with Guide. So with that said, Troy, the floor is yours. The way we do this, as you may know, the next like 30 minutes or so, we'd love to see a proper demo of the product, see it in action, see it work. Then we open it up for a Q&A. Our members will probably have some questions for you, and we'll, of course, love to hear your answers. And then the last 10 minutes, we open it up for reverse Q&A. Any questions that you may have for us, we're excited to answer them ourselves. And then, of course, we do a little bit of voting at the end. So this should be fun. Troy, thanks for joining us here at Silo Tank. We're excited to see Guide.
Lovely. Thanks for the intro, Amir. Hi, everyone. I'm Troy. I am, as mentioned, one of the co-founders of Guide. I have spent many years in talent and ultimately took the, I suppose, somewhat masochistic route to build software for talent people, and I've eaten a lot of talent all along the way. I am now working on Guide, which will be the topic of our conversation today. But as Amir mentioned, it's been about 10 years building recruiting software after my kind of stint in recruiting as a first recruiter a head of talent, and then worked at Google and kind of a much bigger machine. But I do like to share a very quick just origin story of Guide, and then we will get into the live demo here, which is to say I joke that I will give you a couple quick slides here that just to understand our thesis here at Guide. We didn't wake up one day and say, like, you know, I really believe that there should be another scheduling tool in the world, and I'm really passionate about that. It wasn't really our story. We were building for about 5.5 years an outbound sourcing automation platform and CRM for talent teams. And we were about 24 people at the time with no recruiters. And so we were doing all of our own recruiting and ended up building the first version of Guide internally to automate a lot of our own process. And to make a very squirrely story short, we got more excited about that potential of that internal product than our core business. Our direct and biggest competitor at the time was Gem. So Gem acquired our company. We kept just the internal tool, and like at 9 a.m. the next day after the papers were signed, we were a new company. We had spun out Guide, and we started with our first product in the market, which was the first modern candidate portal for the Greenhouse customer base. We were very quick to become a Greenhouse customer preferred partner. I think one of the youngest companies to ever get that moniker. But we spent that year growing our candidate portal product while interviewing teams using the current set of scheduling tools in the market, the Good Times, the Modern Loops, the Preludes at the time. And we were persuaded through those hundreds of interviews that there was a need for another product. And our cheeky thesis, as I like to joke, is like, your big fancy scheduling automation tool isn't actually that automated. That was our big kind of insight. It sounds kind of obvious, but AI was on the rise. Models were increasingly being able to reason. The coordination workflow is typically the most repetitive and redundant. There's a range of 10 or 20 sort of lanes and repetitive workflows that coordinators do. So it really felt like a good use case. And so we built on that premise. The idea is that we save you a lot more work. We can deliver an even better candidate experience using our candidate portal technology that we've now integrated deeply into our system. And underlying everything that I'll show you today, you may be familiar with, if you're familiar with the scheduling space, all the underlying primitives that one needs to do complex interview scheduling, load balancing, interviewer matching, reporting, training, all of that exists in Guide. But I'll kind of focus our demo today on what's been kind of the more area of interest, which is our launch into really much more sophisticated agentic automation with what we call ARIA, our AI agent for recruiting coordination. So that's where we'll spend our time. I'm going to switch over to the browser so we can demo. I will orient us quickly, which is to say, I will be working from Greenhouse ATS. If you're familiar with Greenhouse, I am using the sort of legacy profile view, which happens to be my preference. I will avoid getting on my high horse about what I think about the newer design, which I've not adjusted to yet, but Guide works the same on both. Guide in the ATS experience lives as this sort of floating assistant that follows you around the ATS and understands the context you're in this case, a candidate profile. When you pop Guide open, I like to think of this as the sort of remote control for this candidate's experience. Anything scheduling, coordination, messaging, interview prep, portal related, you can control here. And like any of the existing scheduling platforms that you may be familiar with, Guide has click-based workflows for everything. You can request self-schedule or an availability request by clicking into things. So all of these exist. So if and when automation is something you want to step in and intervene before an automation takes place, you can. And all of those manual workflows exist underneath the surface. But what we've been focused on really in our big our big innovation to we think the space, or we hope, is be able to automate a lot of the stuff that I normally have to spend 20 or 30 clicks to coordinate a candidate through their process, even if I have the fanciest scheduling tool on the market. And so I will show you now how Guide works with Aria. Once Aria is set up, Aria lives as an assistant, an agent, if you will, on the side of the Guide portal. And I will mostly work from the recruiter experience, just so you can kind of orient at what we're looking at. So I'm a recruiter. I have a brand new candidate that's come into my ATS from some source, and I'm going to move them to the recruiter screen, which is typically the simplest single interview stage. And that recruiter will move that screen or move that stage rather. And you can see that Aria, the assistant, is already letting me know that she's going to work. And I'm going to go ahead and click this so I can view what's going on. And I can see in this case that Aria has drafted a self-schedule request that she's automatically going to send based on the template that I like to use and my settings in 5 seconds here. She's also going to generate a candidate portal for the candidate. So I'm just going to let this happen automatically. And now you can see that Aria has sent that message to the candidate, which includes me as a recruiter, all my personal self-schedule requests, which I can kind of edit or review. And what just happened was fully automated using one of Aria's 2 modes, which we call autopilot. Autopilot is when I've taken an action enough times and it's simple enough that I never edit the suggestion that Aria makes. We default users to what we call co-pilot experience in Guide, which Aria will make suggestions about what she wants to go do, and you can edit or approve them. But once you find yourself approving and not editing, that's when you might turn on autopilot, which I just demoed. I will move to the more complex stage where we need to schedule many interviews in a sort of panel style stage, where each interview has totally different requirements, sets of interviewers, et cetera. And I'll show you an example of Aria on Copilot where I might want to review the more complex actions she's going to take before she takes them. In this case, though, you can see that as a recruiter, all I did was move stages. My self-schedule request was sent out. I can review what that request looks like here, but I would typically just move on to the next candidate. I am going to quickly show you what the candidate experience is with that very first touch point that Guide generates. So you can kind of understand a big piece of Guide's experience, which is the digital candidate experience. So what you're looking at here is the email that I received as a candidate. I've now switched to become Taylor Swift in my wild dream that I'm having right now. And you can obviously see the email as you would expect, but Guide also builds its own messaging email technology in-house. So we allow you to render nice visual buttons and smart cards that will populate like a normal token, but with a lot more visual style. So a candidate will click a big call to action. If you've ever used any self-scheduling like Calendly or your ATS self-scheduler, you'll be very familiar with this. They just pick a time. This is all based on the interviewer's preferences, which are set in Guide. Their time zones are tracked, all of that. And this is where Guide gets a little different, which is once the candidate books. When they do that, they are automatically dropped into a fully personalized candidate portal that Guide system generates on the fly automatically without the recruiting team needing to do any work at all. The candidate can immediately see the interview that they booked, the Meet or Google or rather Zoom links, CoderPad assessment tools, anything that you might have linked to these interviews will automatically display, as will the profiles of any of the interviewers who are scheduled to meet with a candidate. These we auto-generate based on our Slack integration. So these don't need to be shared manually. In this case, you can see the recruiter and the coordinator. You can also display to the candidate a journey that they might expect to go through coming up. And we have a workflow and guide to tailor your internal ATS naming and vernacular to be more candidate friendly. So I can rename my stages, I can hide stages, and I can kind of dial this in to be what the candidate wants to see or what I want the candidate to see. And then lastly, we have the sort of EVP. You have your employee value proposition that lives on the homepage of the guide. You can build this really easily as a talent team, update it with the click of a button, it will go live. There's no engineering work needed here. And then very lastly, as you move or rather schedule candidates for future stages, they're obviously locked until they get there and they can get a teaser of what's to come. But once they're moved into a future stage, Guide will unlock prep content automatically that associates with that stage. So you might unlock content for the take-home assessment that includes instructions and a link to take home for the assessment, but rather that won't get unlocked until you actually schedule the candidate into that step or move them there. We give you analytics and engagement insights into what content candidates are viewing and so on, but I'm not going to spend too much time on the portal because we'll come back here once we schedule a full panel and you can see it all come back together. So I am a recruiter still, and I am going to say that my phone screen went well and I want to move to the next step. In this case, I have an ATS stage that has multiple interviews that need to be scheduled at once, all of which have totally different requirements and interviewers that need to be selected. So again, as a recruiter, I'm just going to move stages in the ATS. And Aria is automatically going to start taking action. As you can see, she's created a scheduling task that will give my RC visibility, and she's going to automatically go ahead and generate my preferred template for an availability request. And in this case, I still have Aria on autopilot because it's a very repeated step. So she's just going to fire this availability request out automatically. And you can see that happening. So now you can see I have a request for availability that's outstanding. Of course, I can edit it or add availability if I get that over the phone or text. I also have a scheduling request that will now track the status of this candidate through the scheduling process. So my whole team gets visibility in real time. And I happen to have a rule set for this job that says the moment that the candidate submits availability, please assign the scheduling task over to my coordination team or my coordination queue. So to see how that works, I'm just going to quickly, again, be the candidate. I just received that availability request email. It's very similar, but a different call to action. And I'm just going to see a slightly different UI as a candidate so I can submit my preferred availability. And I'm going to submit this. And what you can see is Guide is constantly pushing the candidate back to the company story, the company portal. This is where the content is that you can control. And if I go back into the recruiter view, presumably I would have moved on at this point. I can just move stages and go on to the next candidate. But if I'm watching what happens and I have the Guide portal open, I can watch the work that Aria is going to do in near real time. And I can see that happen here. And what you can see is that Aria has looked at the candidate's availability, which just got received, all of the interviewer requirements for this rec, which have been preset. I need so-and-so from the backend pool. I need one interviewer who speaks English and knows Python and who also is an L5 for this other interview. So all of these rules are built into Guide's requirements. And then once you stand up the role, this is automated. Now, presumably, if you have a larger TA team, your coordinator will take over at this stage. And so the automation I had set is to automatically assign this task to my coordinator, which you can see. This task was, if I jump into it, it's assigned to my coordinator now. The task status is scheduling needed. And I can see all of the requirements that were plugged in. So as a coordinator, which I will switch to now. Well, I will actually flag this as urgent so I can see this pop up at the top of my queue. You can see that work. I am now switching to become a recruiting coordinator, if I'm not making you guys dizzy by now. And recruiting coordinators, for the most part, work out of the guide coordination dashboard. This is a dashboard they can customize to show the data they like and be in the order that they like. It's really it's a productivity dashboard that each coordinator can customize and filter in many ways. But what they'll see is that they got an email notification and an in-app notification right away that says that they've been assigned a scheduling task, which they can click. You can also notice that before I did that, this task was surfaced at the top of my queue. That's because I put an urgent label on it, but I can see this task coming in. I'm in my assigned to me view. So I can just click that task, and I know that what needs to happen now is I need to review and approve the panel. And this is what it looks like when Aria has this step on Copilot. That means that she's not going to just go schedule this interview right now. She's actually going to let me review the panel first, because I very likely want to put my eyes on it. So I can see here all the details of the ticket, the candidate availability, activity on the ticket on this candidate that has happened prior to me getting assigned it. And here I can see the suggested panel that Guide is deciding we should use. Now I can just click approve if it looks good, and this scheduling process will complete. All interviewers will get invites. They'll get Slack notifications where they can RSVP on email or on Slack. And then Aria will automatically draft and send my candidate confirmation. Now, presumably, there's a lot of detail orientation here, at least early on in using Guide, and I want to put my eyes on everything. So I want to dial this in maybe and get some more detail. In that case, I can intervene here. Instead of approving, I can click edit, and Guide will bring up its calendar view, which is the place in which Guide shows its work. As a recruiter or coordinator, I can look at what Guide chose and why. And I can see, for example, Christina was selected by Guide for the sales exec pool. And I can see her load, monthly interview load, weekly and daily, as well as how many interviews max she prefers to do, weekly, daily, and monthly. And if I click to another interview that's more complex, I can see that I have 3 interviewers selected. I can see all of their time zones are different here. And if I want, I can notice that I can actually move things around. I have full control in the last mile here. I can override the system's automation. I can say, gray space is outside of the candidate's working hours, or availability rather, light gray outside of the interviewer's working hours, and white spaces works for all parties across all time zones. So I can, for example, I can see that this interview, I can move up, and maybe I prefer to offer a break here because maybe I didn't bake that into my requirements up front for some reason. And now I'm good. I would just click continue and complete the scheduling of this interview. So that's what an intervention flow looks like. Before I just approve and show you Aria complete the scheduling, I want to show you something new that we've built, which is called blended workflows. So if I click this icon, I'll do that a little more slowly. If I look at Aria's most recent suggestion, there's a settings gear. And that settings gear will bring me in to all of the sort of potential junctures of this workflow. And I can choose for each step to give Aria, our agent, predetermined rules that she will never break. For example, when I send my candidate confirmation, I would like you to do that on autopilot, meaning I don't need to review it. Just let me know that you're about to go do it and give me the chance to stop or edit, but I want you to just go do that. And I want to make sure that you always use this ATS template. So never veer from this template, and I always want you to CC Christina on this email. And then lastly, I want you to automatically bump the candidate portal stage to the virtual onsite when I send the confirmation. In this case, I can dial in each step of the workflow so I can have each preference determined if I don't, to make Aria more accurate, ultimately. When you onboard new users, Aria watches each user go through their workflow through the click-based angle first, and then we'll infer the templates they like to use, whether they use self-schedule or availability request, and she'll build that workflow automatically. And then you as a user can come in and override the inferences that she's made if you have differing preferences. In this case, all's dialed in, and I've already done that, and I like this panel, so I'm just going to click approve. And really, that's the scheduling process. As you'll see, just for sake of the demo, I put the candidate confirmation step on Copilot, so you can just see what that looks like here. But you can see Aria has now scheduled all 4 interviews, all 6 interviewers. I can see their RSVP statuses here. They have calendar invites and Slack notifications. And she's drafted the candidate confirmation using my preferred template. She's rendered the full interview schedule for the candidate visually in the email. And then she's queued this up for me to approve because I have this step on Copilot. So she's also letting me know that when I approve and send, the candidate will be bumped, their portal will be bumped to the next stage. I can always edit this and override it, and Aria will learn that preference moving forward. But I'm just going to go ahead and approve and send. And that's the entire panel scheduling process there. Get notified as a coordinator, review and confirm the schedule, and then in this case, manually approve the confirmation. I typically put that on autopilot though, because it's the same confirmation template every time. And you'll see Aria auto-completed the scheduling task. Everybody involved knows. And as a recruiter, we, if I happen to look at Guide, we have a view built into the Guide recruiter portal here in the ATS where they can track all of their outstanding scheduling requests, including the status of all of them in real time. If their RC comments on anything, they can track that here easily. They can even jump directly into a ticket and complete the next action if their RCs are bogged down. So everything in Guide for recruiters is designed to be done entirely without leaving the ATS. So if I wanted to send an email, it happens on top of the ATS. If I wanted to actually schedule an interview, the entire Guide scheduler works on top of the ATS without leaving. It's a big principle of ours, is to help each stakeholder stay in the tools that they're already working in. Okay, that was a lot. So I'm going to show one more thing in the next 3 minutes before we move for questions, which is one of my more favorite Aria features, which we've released in the last couple of months, which is automatic interviewer swaps and reschedules, because this tends to be a very painful and time-consuming process for most teams. I'm going to come down here, and I can see for this candidate, I can just see their upcoming interviews as a recruiter here, and I can see my interviewer RSVP statuses. I'm going to just manually decline one of these interviewers by editing their RSVP to no, saying they're out of office. This is exactly what will happen if that interviewer just declined in Slack or on their calendar and wrote a note. What will happen here is Aria will immediately begin to think, and she won't notify my coordinator yet, but my coordinator will get a decline email letting them know the interviewer declined. But my coordinator is going to get a notification in just a second once Aria decides what to do next. In this case, Aria said, hey, FYI, Colette has declined the values alignment interview, but I've already found a new time within the candidate's existing availability. Do you want me to update the interview? In this case, we didn't need to ask for more availability because we happen to have some valid still, but in the case where that's not, Aria will automatically be smart enough to notice we need to send an availability request. If that's set to Copilot, she'll ask me first for approval. Otherwise, she'll just do it automatically, which is kind of magical. And she's telling me now, hey, I actually, we couldn't find a qualified interviewer to just swap for the same slot, but I was able to rebuild the panel here with 2 new interviewers and make the interview work 2 hours later on the same day. If you approve this, all the new interviewers will be notified and get invites. The old ones will get cancellation notices. For reschedules and swaps, Aria now is smart enough to always prioritize swaps if there's one available, meaning she won't reschedule the interview. She'll find another qualified interviewer to swap. Only if she can't find a qualified interviewer will she look for the next closest time and typically build a fresh panel, which in this case means maybe swapping out more than just that one interviewer to find a sooner time to reschedule. In this case, I just approve. Again, I can also put this on autopilot. So reschedules can be happening literally while I sleep. And what will happen is Aria will just detect what to do, send out the comms, and now she's updated the interview. As you can see, we no longer have a decline. We have 2 new interviewers, and their RSVPs are pending. Also, this is obviously syncing to your ATS. So those interviewers have been swapped out. And this candidate has been scheduled. And just to close the loop before I stop yapping here, the candidate will, of course, get their confirmation email. Aria is never publicly facing, or I should say candidate facing. Aria is an assistant to help me as a recruiter or coordinator automate my work, including automate actions that I would take. But I am always still the candidate facing personality, and typically it's my template, it's my language. Candidates can see their schedule. They can go directly into their portal. There's an inbox tab where they can see a history of all the communications they've had with my company in one place. They can reply from their portal, which is pretty popular with candidates. They can use Guide's editor tech, like add GIFs and files and attachments. And then lastly, if they go to the homepage, you'll now see that they've been bumped to the on-site stage. All of their upcoming interviews and breaks have been automatically rendered and put front and center for them. All the new interviewers' profiles have been added automatically, so candidates can access their LinkedIns and info. And then lastly, we've unlocked some prep material automatically that's relevant to this stage. So all of that is just happening, and that's what the integrated candidate experience, as well as the automation on the inside of the company, that's how they kind of come together here. I think I'll pause here for questions, and maybe I'll note a few things. There's many auxiliary features like analytics on portals, so you can see actually whether candidates are engaging with certain content, how often they're opening them. You get analytics on each individual email that you send, which shows you that it's been opened or read. And there's offer experiences and a host of other things, surveys built into our portal to bring together the candidate experience and ensure that the automation that you're leaning on internally isn't resulting in a more poor experience for the candidate. It's really about being in a new world where AI enables us to do both, increase candidate ATS and eliminate hours of work, do less internally. I assume there'll be a lot of questions because I just covered a lot, but I'm very much open and ready if there are.
A couple basic questions. One, I was curious if it can schedule interviews over more than one day during the week automatically. And then also, does it confirm with the candidate prior to getting the RSVPs for the interviewers confirmed, or does it wait until those are done?
Yeah, both good questions. So the first one, yes, you can actually instruct Guide per job or per interview on specifically how you like to spread the interview panel. So you can spread it across days or make it flexible or limit the amount per day. So yes, you can bake that into your requirements and Aria will know automatically when the panel is built. And then 2, it's your choice. Guide has many customers and users that prefer to wait for interviewer RSVPs to come back yes before they confirm with the candidate, and many that like to just confirm and then they'll deal with a reschedule if they get a decline. You can do both. Guide will actually ask you whether you want to update the candidate, and if you're using Aria for that step, the recommended workflow is just to keep Aria on Copilot just for that final step, and you'll just click the approve and confirm button once you get the RSVPs that you're waiting for.
Gotcha.
You can also do that right from our interviews dashboard, by the way, where you can view all upcoming scheduled interviews that are scheduled internally, and you can track all of your invites. So if, for example, all of these turn green, I can just click this, and Aria's suggestion would be right here. I can just approve.
And then we obviously build out recruiting plans with specific interview questions and stuff like that into Greenhouse. You were showing me kind of like, where do you put the information of what to expect in the interview or how to prepare for that interview? And is there any way for it to, I mean, so I'm assuming it doesn't impact the interview plans, all the feedback still going into the ATS. It's just the scheduling of it.
That's exactly right. But you can include any sort of prep material in the guide candidate portal. And so we have a default, what we call a default template, where you can build the sort of org level information. And then for each department or job, you can actually edit what gets exposed in each stage in terms of prep content, because that might vary per job. So you can just say, if the job is in department engineering, make sure that this stage shows this content. And so it will only unlock once a candidate is scheduled for that stage, then the content will unlock. Your recruiters also have the ability to tweak candidate specific content right inside a greenhouse by clicking edit. Now they can edit the content that this candidate is seeing. And they can also see the default content that's being populated by your template, your org template.
And whose emails are the candidates seeing, even though Aria is maybe sending them?
Yeah, the candidate is seeing the emails of the recruiting coordinator or recruiter assigned on the job. Aria is completely invisible to the candidate.
All right, can you tell us a little bit about cost and also how you see the general landscape? Obviously, like the company Good Time comes to mind when thinking about who might be a competitor of yours.
Yeah.
So kind of curious to understand how you view the world, how you view the space, etc.
Yeah, your first question was around cost. Guide tries to keep pricing as simple as possible. It's kind of our like core philosophy here. We look at total FTE count and length of contract, and those are really the only two variables. The reason total FTE count is relevant is it's the closest proxy for usage, number of recs open, number of candidate throughput, portals used, amount of AI. It pretty much gives us a good estimate. But there's unlimited licenses. All the features that you see are deeply integrated together. So we don't sell anything a la carte. You can't like buy Guide without a portal. It's just deeply integrated in, which is different than some of the folks that you've mentioned. So it's one price, unlimited everything, all features, and it's typically based on FTE count. And then your second question, how do I view the space? Yes, you're right about the competitive set. Guide competes with the traditional or more legacy scheduling tools that have been in the space for quite a while. Good Time is one of them. Modern Loop is another. Prelude, which was acquired by Calendly, was another kind of good comparable. And there are a host of others, smaller ones. Guide really doesn't think about the world today being building software for coordinators. Though today, our internal goal in North Star is to automate the bottom 50% of the work that coordinators do today. It's the most repetitive, it's the most error prone, it's also the least enjoyable. It's the stuff that they want to get out of the weeds on, so they can elevate to more candidate experience focused things. However, we really believe in building a tool to automate coordinating, and we think it's largely not going to be the job, as ironic or counterintuitive as it sounds, it's not going to be the job of the coordinator in just maybe a couple years' time. So a lot of what we build is really just thinking about an agentic task system and execution layer on top of the source of record, where today we are not the source of record. We think, the greenhouses, the Ashbys of the world are doing a great job. They even have a lot of pretty robust scheduling functionality, but they don't have an agentic approach. And it's a very different thing to be able to have features that do what I need to do, that help me do my work, versus having a system that does my work for me, gives me the right visibility, gives me the ability to intervene, elevates me from an author to an editor, is what we say a lot at Guide. Today, coordinators are very much necessary, but hopefully less so in cases where it's very structured of an interview process, it's high volume, it's repetitive. We can move coordinators over to these more complex cases where EAs are involved, or there's exec recruiting that needs higher touch, etc. Ops work, recruiter enablement. These are all areas that typically are underserved in our business. So we see a lot of opportunity to up-level everything once the mundane stuff is automated. So by and large, I think, there are going to be, my view is personally, there will be changes to the nature of the way we build our TA teams. I think we already see a lot of the writing on the wall. For example, we see many of Guide customers moving to recruiter-only models. That's probably not the majority today, but it's not anomalous either. For example, we have a company at Guide that uses Guide that has 70 full-time recruiters and no coordinators. They're enabled to do that because they have software that can take enough of it off the recruiter's plate that model is economical. But what we're seeing more is a more favorable ratio of coordinators to recruiters. So this is kind of what we see as the writing on the wall: less coordinators per recruiter, or you could say more recruiters per coordinator, perhaps, because coordinators are becoming a lot more powerful with automation software. So in the end, I'm pretty agnostic on the timeline, but I'm fairly certain, the thought experiment I like to run is, in 100 years, do I think that the recruiting coordinator job will exist as it does today? My answer is no, with a fairly confident bet there. But I would say, is it going to happen in 6 months or 2 years? That I'm more agnostic about the timeline.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope that was helpful and I didn't just ramble blindly there.
No, for sure.
Cool.
Troy, quick question. So
Sure.
One, how many Ashby users would you say that you have? Because a lot of the features and functionality of this are actually built into Ashby. And so where would you say they see their value the most?
Yeah. Guide works with both Greenhouse and Ashby, and has Ashby customers tend to really be, if you're under a few hundred employees, I would often recommend to really try to leverage what you get out of the box with Ashby. I think you can get there. I think what you often can't do is do automation on top of an enterprise level workflow. So Guide's Ashby customers skew enterprise, and largely buy Guide for automation, more automation than Ashby offers, and candidate experience, which Ashby doesn't offer.
Okay. Second question, because I mean, a lot of what was built into that is something that we build out in Ashby that automates with the emails that get sent and the follow-up and the LinkedIn links for the interviewers and all of those things. So the piece where we find missing is when I have a panel interview with 5 interviewers and they all have very full schedules, and finding things that can be moved. And I saw that there was a Slack integration that had the messages that go out. Can we move this one-on-one? Those types of things. With the advent of and more prolific use of agent tools like N8N, where you can go and build your own agent to do that one piece for you, how do you see this fitting into that, or competing with that, where it's just there's that one piece that needs to be done, and hey, I can use this N8N and build my agent to do it for me?
Yeah. Out of curiosity, have you seen that done successfully in production?
We've talked about N8N agents here, and that's something that is, I think it's growing. It's something that a lot of people don't know about yet. It's something that I'm working on internally here at ProKeep, because we are smaller and there's just a lot less, like you said, of the enterprise problems that come up. And so fixing that one problem is a goal of mine between now and the end of the year, using an agent to do that. And if the agent can't do that, it's such a small portion of my time that it takes to just look at calendars and know what can be moved, that coming in and seeing a product like this, it might not be the best fit, again, because of our size and where we're at under 100 employees.
Yeah, totally. I align, my intuition aligns with that. Vast minority of Guide customers are under 100 employees, and most are over 500. So typically the problems that we tend to solve arise as you get more complex processes across larger teams. So that's just a little bit of a side note, but your question around using Slack as a conduit for communications with AI, and it's a big focus for Guide. It is the upcoming release for our agent Aria. It is not yet in production, but we have a host of things coming, including what you're alluding to, we refer to as conflict resolution. And so on Copilot or autopilot mode, Guide will automatically be detecting when there are conflicts with quite a high intelligence as for what might or might not be movable, and then automatically pinging or drafting for you to approve the Slack message to ping the interviewer with you copied in on the thread. And the key is that as interviewers interact with these Slack messages more, Guide actually is able to infer whether they're always moving one-on-ones, whether they're only never moving meetings with an external party on the invite, etc., and build that interviewer's profile preference to a much more sophisticated degree than like a normal tool would have today. And thus, the next time the algorithm runs and selects that interviewer or each interviewer, it knows a lot more about their tendency and preferences based on the feedback they've given us in Slack. So if we notice a yes to a one-on-one being moved twice, we might, this is the LLM, might ask the interviewer, hey, are you always willing to move? You know, we noticed you said yes to this twice. Are you always moving to move this one-on-one or a one-on-one? And if yes, that gets pushed to the interviewer profile in what we call a flexible meeting. And Guide's algorithms now know they can utilize that time despite that calendar event or a similar calendar event being on the calendar in the future. So this isn't in GA yet. There's a lot of testing happening here with details like what are interviewer response rates with or without the coordinator attached on the thread? How responsive are interviewers to the initial RSVPs, conflict messages versus follow-ups? We have a bunch of Slack stuff that is live that includes Slack channels and follow-ups and RSVPs and reminders. But the next big step, we think, for the agentic component is the tentacles that reach past the actual scheduling system in the ATS into communicating with the stakeholders themselves.
Thanks.
Yeah. Slack in particular, we like. There's quite a lot that's coming here. Like we can detect when interviewers move locations, for example, and automatically ask them if they want to update their interviewer hours for that week or while they're traveling, and then we can detect when they've moved back. So there's quite a lot of benefit that we can get from a messaging system like a Slack or Teams that we struggle to get with something like a static calendar. Let's see if I can find my Zoom window here.
Awesome. Any other questions for Troy? Otherwise, we're going to flip it around. Fantastic. Troy, in this call, at one point in 18, I think now we're at 13, heads of talent leaders, talent executives. You have them here. Most of them have budget. I would say like 98% of these folks have budget to spend. So if you have any questions for this ecosystem, for the people on this call, we're happy to answer any of them.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for everyone's attention. My curiosity and what I'm spending a lot of time pondering is there's quite a lot of like promise in the AI sphere. We're talking a lot, we have a lot of desires, we're imagining things that might be possible. But personally, and at Guide, we're not seeing a lot yet that really feels transformative. I would say one of the few use cases that we really, once you see, we like kind of can't go back, is AI notes, interview notes. We're finding that like our sales team who like buys something like Gong, we just can't ever imagine a world where we're not recording those calls anymore. And getting the insights that come of them. And I think we believe in a similar sort of staying power for those tools. I'm wondering if anybody else is seeing anything else to date that you're truly like, wow, this is an application of AI that seems like it's living up to the promise that we as TA folks hope to see with AI. Or have implemented anything that's transformed your process. Just maybe you can take the question generally. I'm mostly very curious to learn from y'all's eyeballs. You're probably seeing quite a bit more than me.
Yeah, we've been using a tool called Endorse AI, and it's been super helpful not only on sourcing side because it has such a deep search on there you are, deep search on sourcing. And it goes into things like being able to select out, I want someone that's had at least 4 years of experience at a Series A to Series C in this industry with this much funding. Like, it gets so specific. And that's been super helpful because it's not just something you get from traditional outbound searches or using LinkedIn, because it's pulling in like Crunchbase data and that kind of thing, as well as also ranking resumes and looking at where people have worked before and taking that information into account from their resume, and being able to say things like likely has been responsible for, strategy and something else. So the likely has piece, being able to input those in there and let it infer things based on titles, where they worked, what level they were at, how many people are in the company, the stage of the company. That's been huge for us because it's cut down on time sourcing and time spent reviewing resumes by like 60%.
Wow. So it sounds like the inbound stack ranking or resume review of the inbound funnel is becoming a lot more high signal because it's surfacing stuff at the top. And then it sounds like a sourcing component that you're finding valuable too, where you're able to source with a little bit more intelligence. Is the outbound also automated, or it's really just search and find?
So really once it searches and it kind of ranks those, then it pushes those into the ATS, and then we set up our automations in the ATS. So
Okay.
Ashby has
Gotcha.
outbound cadences.
I would second the sourcing. I would also add, I think the most obvious ones, and I think probably the ones we first saw impact on, are job description creation. And also I've been developing tools internally that create really customized recruiting plans for each job based on our internal leveling guides and competency requirements for those levels. And now we have custom GPTs that we can utilize to spit those out pretty quickly. And those are things that typically took like almost a week to get done, working with hiring manager prior to get things set up because everybody's busy. So that's streamlined our process considerably, those two steps.
Awesome. So you're seeing value on the sourcing side and then building custom GPTs for internal processes that would typically you just take a lot of time or require a bunch of manual work.
Exactly. Well, and I think you can get the results that you actually want more specifically, right? Like, there's tons of job description generators out there. They're built into ATSs now. A lot of custom interview questions built into ATSs, but not a lot of them will edit or allow you to edit kind of how it's thinking about creating those questions or how it
give it context.
And so we can customize them to our needs by building it ourselves.
Yeah, fascinating. I love that.
Yeah, we're using Noon. I think it's pretty similar to Endorsed. I think that's the product. Where it's sort of intelligent sourcing. You can do the same thing as far as like if you are looking for Series A, startup developers or whatever, Fortune 500, eliminate employees from Apple or whatever. It'll do that. I like the intuitiveness of it. I also like the campaign where messaging, where it actually will look at that particular person's background and give a little nugget about like, hey, I saw that you're working for this company, which, if you're doing that, then you're probably doing this particular thing. So it catches their eye. It also lets you customize the messaging too. So if you want to change the tone to, lighten the mood of the emails if they're not responding, you can do that also. So, I think that, not only the sourcing, but the attraction piece, I like from an email campaign perspective. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I know we got a couple more minutes, unless anybody else has like some recs. I'm just selfishly interested in what's going on in the space. If not, maybe if anybody, I mean, you all just kind of saw a pretty quick and high level demo of Guide, but I'm just curious how it lands, where there feels, it was super helpful. I'm not sure who it was giving the feedback around Ashby, but I thought that was quite helpful. If anybody else has just general kind of reaction, feedback, what you'd want to see in more AI powered or agentic scheduling, given the nature of your org or the idiosyncrasies that are the way you operate, or anxieties? I'm just curious about feedback.
So I like love the tool, and I think when I was running like huge recruiting teams at scale, this would have been like a critical part of the tech stack. The challenge that I have as you're walking through it is the same challenge that I have trying to get Ashby to work right? Is there's so much upfront configuration and having to integrate things. So like when you're like, oh yeah, and then just like any engineer for this thing for L5 for the I'm like, that's great. But in my head, it's like, well, we got a code tell guide who's an L5 and which system am I hooking that into? And then inevitably when the systems team comes to me and says, by the way, we're going to switch to Workday, that's all getting blown up. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I think like the thing is that the frustration I have with Ashby and the frustration that I could see with the way that you would need to configure, just the amount of configuration to get the lift that you can provide. I feel like we're at that point in the AI journey where it's like, there's so much upfront work. You really have to have the bandwidth and the team and somebody in RecOps who's willing to like go map all these things out, because it's such a huge load on folks. The thing that I was thinking while I was having that kind of reaction was like, it would be so much easier if I could just voice like literally like tap a microphone button and tell the thing what it needs to be doing and have it apply rules across things, versus doing all the clicks and the content and et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know that we're there yet where we can just talk to our recruiting software and have it configure itself. But I mean, I see the compounding value for huge teams at scale trying to do this type of work. I just think like it's so much upfront to get this to work the right way at the level of detail. Because like the things you're outlining, like I've built, like the guide part of it, like I had engineers build that at one of my companies. So we have that as like an internal tool for candidates. So like I see the need for it and I get the value. Totally. I just think it's tough for the upfront configuration.
Yeah, great feedback. I mean, this is something that we thought long and hard about when we got into the space. It was true for our last company too, and recruiting with TA teams. But I didn't get into this, and I don't think we're in the like golden state or golden age yet. But one nice thing about agents in workflow software on top of SaaS, Guide and Aria, for example, Aria just sits in the background until you start taking your first few actions, and then we'll suggest to automate the step. So there isn't an upfront set of configuration. You could do that, but I think we'll see tools, including Guide in the future, lean into like a per user Clippy style. Like we can today with our agent give each user an individual onboarding experience. It's pretty amazing, and that's how it works today. That's how our recruiters and coordinators onboard. So we just train them on how to use the core workflows, and then Aria just starts popping out and telling them what they can automate. And then as they get more comfortable, they can turn on autopilot, which she'll suggest. So it's a little bit different for the new user, but it's not perfect. And there's always going to be this challenge of, I need to link up all my integrations for these tools to work. If I switch integrations, things break. I need to audit and review certain, org level data so I don't piss anybody off, et cetera. So totally take your point.
I definitely see the value in the tool, especially when, right now, we're a smaller firm, so the pain isn't as high. But I know in peak hiring times when, if we're hiring like, 25 to 50 devs, to go, the volume of actually having to, find that right dev, that would be a huge benefit to, to use a tool like this. At peak time.
How big are you guys, out of curiosity?
150.
Yep.
Or close to that. Close,
Yep.
Awesome.
Lovely.
Thank you so much.
I think we're just on time. Yeah.
Yeah, we hit time. Troy, thank you so much for coming in today. It's really awesome to always see what a builder in the space is building, but also when that person is a recruiter by trade, it's always special. So thanks so much for being willing to show us a little bit more about Guide. If people want to contact you for demos or for trials, are you offering a trial today? If so, you have any data around that you can share with the group?
Yeah, easiest way to contact me is just email directly troy@guide.co or go to our website guide.co and you can kind of learn more about Guide and book a demo directly there. Trials, we don't do a formal, what you'd think of as a trial today, but we do have an opt-out period where it's a no questions asked. If you don't get what you want, you can just opt out. And so we do that just because we spend a lot of resources implementing customers. So we want to know that like the contracts and paperwork is all done if it does work out. So we do that first. It effectively works like a trial, but it's unfortunately still quite a, we run trainings, you have a CSM that implements you. It's not like the bottoms up tool. We need to go through security and connect your ATS. It still requires the hurdles.
Totally understand. But thank you so much for coming in today. People know where to reach you. Thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you guys so much for the attention. See ya.
Thanks, Tony.